Thank you very much. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really want to thank Jerez. This is my second time in Morocco in 6 months. I was here in Marrakesh in December for another wonderful dialogues. It was the Atlantic Dialogue, so this is my first time in Rabat. I'm really grateful for this opportunity for many reasons. The last time I was really in the MENA region was about 10 years ago. I used to work in, did some work in Egypt and Jordan, and realized that there's so much that we can learn from each other in sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa. And there's this artificial divide, which is artificial, but it's real in that we don't dialogue and we don't learn from each other, and we develop policies in abstraction as if we're not on the same continent. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to come and share some of my experiences. And I particularly work in Kenya, Nigeria, and Ghana. That's been my experience over the last 10 years in particular. So I'm going to talk about analog lives and digital futures. And the reason I've given it that title is that, yes, we are in futures which are increasingly becoming like science fiction, so more digital, automation, all those things. But in many of the countries that I live and work in sub-Saharan Africa, we're still living very rural, analog lives, as it were. So there is this contradiction, this paradox of a future that is emerging, impacting a whole big group of people, and they're within it, and yet they're not within it. So it's not just the digital divide, it's ways of thinking and ways of being which are disconnected from this future, which is very big reality in some parts of the world and not so real in sub-Saharan Africa. So, as Fabian said, I'm a director of a think tank and knowledge management consultancy called Africa Knows, and also of a new organization which actually is part of the story I'm going to tell, called Akai. Now, Akai focuses on data. We are part of a delivery unit which is helping the government to look at how do we get basic raw data. We don't have data. We don't know how many people are born, how many die, how many go to school, just basic data. We can't make any decisions. And so organizations are being brought on board for this African data revolution. So ACAI stands for Africa Cities Analytics Institute. And cities particularly because it's easier to get data in city units rather than in big national units. So I'll tell you about the work that I'm doing, and the reason I'm telling the story in this way is because Africa Knows does a lot of futures implementation workshops. So we're called upon by governments and organizations to apply futures. So I'm not a futures theorist, and I don't think about it conceptually so much, but I apply it a lot. So we use the tools of foresight and bring groups together, either in government or communities, to say, okay, how do we apply this to think through what is the landscape going to look like? What are our options? What can we do? What are the scenarios? So I do a lot of workshops and a lot of policy assistance at different levels for different governments. And so ACAI, how it emerged, and you'll see from the presentation, was through a futures workshop, and you'll see as I go forward. So my presentation, I'm going to introduce a little bit about what I do very quickly because it's not that important. But I'm going to talk about futures and how it created a bridge. We have a grant to do a number of futures workshops across sub-Saharan Africa this year for Rockefeller Foundation, and how through that co-creation process, we developed a program with a county government in Kenya called the Barefoot Digital Youth Squad. So as I said, Africa Knows, we do a number of things, knowledge management, but also stock photography and events management. I was so happy that Rosa talked about the power of image and the power of image to shape a culture, to shape a narrative, to shape a sense of how you see yourself. This is something that we started off, actually Africa Knows started off mostly looking at stock photography and imagery, but because our core skills have always been as experts and scientists, we were called upon to bring that into the business. Oh, sorry. So why do we do this? As I said, Africa Knows comes from a philosophy which is at the bottom, and the philosophy is that we believe that we carry within ourselves all the answers that we are seeking outside. So yes, we go outside and we look for solutions, but in the end, we will only find the solutions that resonate with something that is already there. And because we believe that, it can give us some kind of courage that we're not looking blindly. The answers are already contained in our communities, in our societies, in our ways of doing things. We just need to uncover, rediscover, and remember. And so that was the philosophy, and that's why we called it African Knows, because we believe we know the answers, we just don't know it here, we know it somewhere else. And so it's an opportunity to help new ways of seeing, new ways of being, and very importantly, new narratives of Africa. I'm going the right way, this way. Yeah, okay. So Africa has a lot of challenges, as I said, and it's the big challenge when you're trying to work as a futurist in sub-Saharan Africa, because it's very difficult to have the luxury of looking at future scenarios when your present reality is so pressing. So often organizations and business and government come and says, we want to use futures and foresight, but then you spend your whole time talking about we don't have water, we don't have power, and it's very difficult to shift people from the problem now to a future scenario and then looking for that as a possibility. The world is framing future milestones. So the Sustainable Development Goal is the big future milestone. And the narrative are 17 future milestones, huge ones. The narrative around that is that we should leave no one behind. And this is an important narrative, as I said in the beginning. In these futures, as I'm going to talk about these digital futures, some of us are in danger of being left behind in some countries in sub-Saharan Africa if we don't actually do something very purposeful about supporting inclusion. So as I was saying, Africa Knows that we have a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation, who've been very interested in futures for a long time and use it as part of their strategic program development. And they've been conducting workshops around the world, and we are a grantee to conduct workshops in sub-Saharan Africa and bring together participants to look at thematic issues which were developed from other workshops. So the thematic issues that we looked at, particularly in the last workshop that I'm focusing on, were work, services, inclusion, and we had a category called outliers so that we could have a container for surprises and unexpected things. The framework that we used is an interesting framework called Riding the Two Curves. I don't know if you can see that. Yes, okay. And it was developed by Institute for the Future, who had done the workshops, some workshops for Rockefeller in Asia, Latin America, and in the US, in North America. So we decided to also try and adapt it for continuity, and we used that in Nairobi. And it's a much more simple frame to have a conversation with a group that is not used to futures, perhaps not that interested, but you need to shift them to a futures frame in a short amount of time, a one-day workshop. So how we do it, we frame the conversations. You look at your present state today, you look at what you think, what assets that you have today could continue in the future, even though they will continue to a decreased extent. So if you're looking at something like the rise of Uber, you're saying, well, there will always be other forms of transportation. We're seeing the rise of Uber as an early signal of change, but they're taxis, but they may be a continued asset. There are other ways, but they're going to go down. And then you look at scenarios for the possible future. It's not easy to get people, as I said, to shift from present to future, but that's the challenge of the work that we do. So in the last workshop that we did, and as I said, Rockefeller specifically are funding this to get ideas. All they want are ideas. They want 20 to 30 ideas of where to develop programs. So they're saying, we're a small grant organization. If you look at comparison to Bill and Melinda Gates, not the same amount of money to give out. They give out 200 million every year around the world. So how can they target that giving, that for it to have more impact? They've spent a lot of time looking at impact philanthropy, so that which group, what exact issues, and not just that the issues are important, because there's a lot of important issues that you may not solve in a short time, but looking at within the important issues, there's always something, a tipping point, some projects, some ideas that are that are on the tipping point of change, some organizations that are scalable, and that's what they want to see. So they use futures and foresight as a radar, as low to the ground as possible. So these workshops you need to convene them carefully with key influencers, people who really know and are really doing, and so that's part of it. The constituents. The composition of the workshop is really important in terms of the ideas. So in the last workshop, we had a range of ideas, and it's on a website, it's on the Africa Knows Futures website. We have 12 ideas, and on the website, you'll see them developed more because we have videos, we have some papers which go with each idea. So within each key thematic area, there were 3 main ideas that rose to the top. So I'll talk about 3 that rose to the top and led to the program that we then developed later on. So one of the ideas that really resonated was ideas on healthcare delivery. How do we use the rise of technology, mobile health technologies, to improve healthcare, to support healthcare systems and healthcare delivery? So an idea came up, and it was remembering that about 50 years ago, the Chinese had an experiment which was the Chinese barefoot doctors, where they said, okay, we don't have enough doctors, we haven't got time to train them, but we need to develop a systems approach to supporting our healthcare system. So they trained farmers and just rural people on basic healthcare delivery. They became the healthcare support system to fill the gap before the system could really deliver. So looking at that model, we began to think about the challenges, and this is in a specific county called Kisumu that has high levels of teenage pregnancy, HIV, infant mortality. So adolescent health care is a big issue, and they're not getting very far in the interventions that they have. And so one of the ideas was, why not bring in more adolescents to support the system? So more peer-to-peer communication, and bring it, because what you're having is community health workers who are 30 or 40 talking to young people about how they should live. So the young people are not talking and they're not listening, and perhaps the language, there's many things lost in translation. So how do you support young people coming into the healthcare system and supporting the community health worker? So the idea of the teenage barefoot doctors and mobile health was one idea that rose to the top. Another idea that rose to the top, because it already was something that the county was doing, was digital literacy training programs. Just basically focusing on enhancing basic digital literacy so that the opportunities that are there on your phone and on the internet, you can access them to expand and find opportunities in education, in all kinds of things that the county actually doesn't give you access to because it doesn't have it, you know. And so that was a program that resonated. The third one was the conversation about data, develop data for governance, and data is the new gold, and how can we get better data and apply it. So those 3 ideas rose to the top. And then the pressing issue that absolutely everybody thought, yes, this is something we absolutely have to think about, find solutions for using this process was youth unemployment. 1 in 5 Kenyan youths is unemployed. So unemployment is so visibly a problem because young people are on the streets. They're sitting on the streets waiting for casual labor. And crime rates have gone up, and it's heartbreaking. So this was an issue that we knew we had to look at much more closely. But within that, there's an opportunity. So this is a 2017 World Economic Forum analysis saying, okay, of the African countries that they analyze, which ones do we see having the capacity in the future to adapt and develop jobs? And as you can see from the graph, Kenya is one of the countries that actually rises to the top. High capacity, high exposure. You can see it on the top right-hand end. And it's that because actually Kenya, although there's high unemployment, the literacy across the region for Kenya is higher than most other countries, higher than Tanzania and all the neighbors, Ethiopia. Literacy in terms of most young people have gone to primary school and attempted secondary school. They may not have finished. And so there's a basic literacy level which is higher than the neighbors. And also there's a technological awareness and young people are there, very early adopters of technology and very innovative in how they use it. So a lot of applications have come out of young people who are not formally trained in tech. So it's a technology hub. And also just because it is the largest economy in the region, in East Africa, it gives it the capacity to if it does apply the right policy, create change very quickly and perhaps create jobs. I won't go into that. These are the statistics basically that support the fact that there are high digital opportunities in Africa. It's helping support our GDP, high penetration of internet and a lot of new subscribers. And as I said, it's creating the digital economy in Africa as a whole is able to create a lot of jobs. It's creating a lot of jobs, and there's a lot of investment going into the digital economy. So the question is, yes, these opportunities are all there, but Africa still lags behind. It's a big digital divide. We have a long way to go. But instead of seeing it as a challenge, we see it as a huge opportunity. We have a huge capacity to expand, and so how do we develop answers and solutions to embrace these opportunities? So this is basically reiterating what I've said already. So we developed a program, and when I say we, meaning there was no workshop, there were government representatives, there were private sector actors who were actually organizations, Liquid Telecom, who were building fiber optics, were part of that Futures workshop. There were many experts, and together the conversation evolved because people were doing more different things but towards the same end in the county. And so a program was developed, and it's called the the program is the Barefoot Digital Youth Squad, and the organization that is leading on that, bringing together all the actors, is Akai. We called it Barefoot Digital Youth Squad because we also wanted to resonate on that idea that you don't need to have a degree. This is something you can pick up and learn, and it's accessible to everybody. So that became the program logo and mantra. Key partners, government, the national government, the county government. That's the county of Kisumu. That's a picture of Kisumu. It's a lovely county, Western Kenya, next to Lake Victoria, opposite, on the other side of Uganda. Google, who coincidentally have a program to train, I think it's like 5 million young people digital literacy skills across the continent. So they're doing that anyway. And so it was very easy to bring them in as partners for this because we simply had a shared common aim and goal. Liquid Telecom, as I said, a private sector actor who are building the fiber optics to help increase broadband connectivity and also Kisumu has the aspiration to be a Wi-Fi zone and to have the fastest affordable Wi-Fi in Kenya to make, basically to stimulate businesses coming into Kisumu, moving away from Nairobi and setting up there because they want to have the fastest broadband connection. So that's one thing. Then Ajira is a government program by the national government, which is basically trying to promote online jobs. So supporting and promoting online jobs, the ecosystem for that, and helping to get more young people trained and understanding that an online job is a job and how can you access it and what could you do. And DCP Kenya are a youth organization. They work with the diaspora youth. So as I said, digital skills training, online work, and Akai particularly looking at mobile apps. Finished? Okay. Mobile apps and wide government support. We focused on school leavers. We trained a lot of informal, we trained 700 young people in 2016, and in 2017 we've already trained 3,500. The target is 5,000. So I'll quickly run through this. These are some of the mobile apps that our young people help to mediate. M-Pesa, M-Farm, which helps get market prices. Mama, which helps health to at-risk mothers. iCow, which helps farmers with livestock. Eneza, which is an education app. And it's about enhancing dignity and, well, I won't read the quote, but thank you very much.